Hello, so welcome back to the next video. Okay, so uh, we have a problem here on the same block diagram reduction techniques, and this is our second example. So those who haven't watched the first example, please you can check one of my previous video I recorded. Okay, so don't miss out, and I mentioned some of the rules that you need to use when you are um, simplifying a block diagram. Okay, so without wasting much of your time, let's get started. Okay, so the question reads, using block diagram reduction techniques, find the closed loop transfer function for the system in figure question 1.1 below. So as you can see, we have interconnection of different blocks. We have G1, G2, G3, G4, H1, and H2. They are interconnected. Okay, so we need to use block diagram reduction rules in order for us to simplify this complex diagram that you're seeing here. Okay, so what are the rules? Moving the summing points, moving the takeoff points, exchanging the summing points. All those rules have to be combined, okay, in order to solve this particular problem. Okay, so let's start. So where do we start from? Okay, so it's very much important before you start solving a block diagram. Okay, first of all, just like I said, you have to identify which blocks are in parallel, which blocks are in series, and if you have any feedback loop, you have to start from there. Okay, now if you look at this block diagram, if you look at this problem that we have here, I don't see any of those blocks that are connected in that manner. There are no blocks that are in parallel, there are no blocks that are in series, and I can't see any feedback loop. Okay, so we need to take a step, one step, two or three, okay, that are going to help us to put those blocks in any of those combinations that I've mentioned. Okay, so for me, I don't know how others see it. Okay, I'm going to start from shifting this takeoff point here. Okay, so I'll start by shifting this takeoff point here, this one here. Okay, so I'm going to shift this takeoff point to this position. Okay, so that's where I'm going to start from. And if I do that, what you're going to notice is that, remember that every time you shift a takeoff point, what do? Okay, the block diagrams, or maybe the blocks or the transfer function for those blocks divide each other, right? So you end up having what? G4 divided by G2 when you move a takeoff point ahead of the block. So the resultant will be G4 divided by G2. Or if it was opposite, moving the block, the takeoff point before the block, you multiply the two. Okay, so this would have been what? G2 times G4. This is in opposition to how you do it when you're moving a takeoff, a summing point. If you're moving a summing point ahead, it's a product, isn't it? If you're moving a summing point before, it's what? It's a division, isn't it? Okay, so I'm going to move this summing point to this position. Okay, so that's where I'm going to start from. And if you notice, if I move that summing point to that position, what will happen is that you're going to end up having this guy. Okay, whatever combination you're going to have, G4 over G2 and G3, those two being parallel, isn't it? Those two being parallel, and then you add them and all that, and then the simplification continues. Okay, so I'm going to start from there. So let me just draw the broad diagram the way it is. Okay, so have two summing points here. This is summing point. Okay, I like using these symbols for summing point. Another summing point here, and then you have a block. This block is G1, and then you have another summing point. Okay, and then you have another summing point. So let me just connect these first. Okay, so in that direction. And then you have a block G2. Okay, and then you have another block G3. And then we have a summing point here. Okay, so now remember that I had this summing point here, isn't it? So it was here initially. So at the takeoff point, it was here initially, right? Now I'm trying to move it to this position, right? Okay, so what you're going to have, and there's also another takeoff point here, okay? This takeoff point goes all the way, okay? It has a transfer function or a gain of h1, okay? It goes all the way to this, and it's negative, right? So negative feedback there. Okay, now I've moved this summing point, so this takeoff point here to this position. So I have another branch, isn't it? So I've moved it here. So it doesn't matter, I can put it at the same position or here. You can either put it here or put it here. When you're combining the takeoff point, you can just put them together because it's more like just a single node. It won't have any effect, okay? So I'm going to write like this. And then the resultant of this is this, right? So I said that, okay, since I moved this takeoff point to this position, you're going to have G4 over G2. Okay, and then here this guy comes here, right? It's positive. And this side again is positive, right? Okay, and then I still have H2. Okay, so H2 starts from where? H2 starts from this takeoff point. Sorry, these are H2, and then it goes all the way. You notice this here, they're not They are not connected here at this point, right? They're just crossing each other. There's no connection there. Okay, and then this is minus plus here, and then you also have a unit feedback. You see this? Okay, this is a unit feedback. As long as there is no block here, it's considered as a unit feedback, right? All the way up to the input there. So you also have this unit feedback here, and it's negative, right? Negative feedback. And then this is the input R of S. This is the output C of S. Okay, so that's like I mentioned. You notice that now these two are now in what? Are now in parallel, isn't it? So G1 over 2 and G3 are now in parallel. And the rule is that you have to add them, isn't it? Okay, so the G1, G4 over 2 plus G3. So I'm going to redraw a flow diagram. Okay, G1 here, and then the summing point. Then I have G2, and then here what I said, okay, after G2 you notice that, okay, of course don't forget here there's also a takeoff point, and then after G2 those G3 and the other block, those guys are in parallel, so they'll be added, isn't it? So we're going to have G3 plus G4 over G2, and then this side you have a summing point. Sorry, this summing point now is no longer there because we've combined these guys, right? So that summing point is no longer there. So what you have is just the takeoff point. So we have the first takeoff point, the first guy, which is H2. Okay, this H2 is connected to this summing point and it's negative. And you also have this guy, which is H1. Okay, this is H1, and then it's connected to this summing point, and it's negative feedback there. Okay, it's forming a negative feedback, and also you have a unit feedback, right, all the way up to here. It's negative, of course. Okay, then yeah, the input R of S, the output is Y of S. Okay, and then now at this point, okay, can we see anything? Okay, are we able to see anything? Parallel series, negative feedback, and all that. I don't think there's any. Okay, I don't think there's any of those. So here I've got a couple of options that you can do. If you want, you can move this summing point to this position. okay? Or you can move this takeoff point to this position, okay? The choice is yours. So I'm going to move this takeoff point to this position. And after doing that, you notice that G2 and this guy are going to be in series, right? Okay, they end up being in series. So let me just move that takeoff point. So I'm going to cross this again, right? Okay, so you know that I'm moving the takeoff point ahead, so I need to do the division. So it will be H1 divided by this guy, isn't it? So I'm going to have H1 divided by G3 plus G4 over G2. And if I simplify this, I multiply both on top and down by G2. Okay, I'm going to have H1 G2 divided by what? G2 G3 plus G4. Okay, so this is what I'm going to have, isn't it? So just keep that in mind. Okay. All right. So let me just draw the diagram. Okay, I'm going to draw the diagram. Okay, this is G1. Okay, this is a summing point. Okay, and then this is G2, right? And then this is that guy. Okay, so this one I can simplify it. I can write as what? G3, a single fraction, right? G2 plus G4 over G2. It's the same thing, isn't it? Okay. Now I've moved this takeoff point from this position to this, right? So it doesn't matter. This guy is now been, you can even connect it here. It's the same position, right? Doesn't matter where you connect it. Okay, it's the same position. So this is what we have. End up with this. So let's see what you're going to have there. So I said this one becomes what? So this one is G2 H1 divided by what? G3 G2 G4. So this is what you have, okay, when you divide, right? Because we're moving this takeoff point to this position. So this will be H1 divided by this gain here, okay? Okay, so all these are connected to the same takeoff point. So there's no problem if you can just write them like that. Okay, and then you also have, oh, sorry, this one is actually connected here. So sorry about that. This guy has to be connected here. Okay, like this, right? Yeah, like that. And then you also have H2. So if you notice this H2 here is still there, right? Connected this summing point here. So this is H2. Okay, so I have H2 there. Nothing has been done to it yet. Okay. Also the same summing, same takeoff point. Okay, so it's the same takeoff point, you can see. And then finally, from the same takeoff point, you also have a unity feedback. Okay, like that. Okay, this is also negative there. Now, having done that, and bear in mind that here these guys are not crossing, okay? Those guys are not crossing. Sorry, they're not connected, not crossing. They're not connected, okay? So now you see that this is now in series, right? So you can multiply the two. So I have G2 multiplied by G3, G2 plus G4 over G2. G2 and G2 cancel out, isn't it? Okay, so what you're going to end up having is something like this. So you have G1, okay, this is G1, and then here you have a summing point. Here now the product of those two, since G2 and G2 cancel out there, what you have is simply G3, G2, G2 plus G4. Okay, and then you still have the same thing, right? So I'm going to write H2 here. Okay, since this H2 Come here, right? This is H2. Of course, it's negative here. I'll start by writing that H2. And also this other big gain here. This one is this goes this side, right? With this whole big gain here. Okay, this whole gain here. And then connected here is negative, right? And then this is what? We say this on G2 H1 over G3 G2 plus G4. Okay, like that, isn't it? And then you also have unit feedback that goes all the way up to here. And then you have the input here, which is the R of S, the output, which is Y of S. Okay. All right. So, and after doing that, I think you can see that we have what? We have a negative feedback, not so. Okay. So this is a negative feedback here. As you can see, this is a negative feedback, not so. Okay. So let us simplify that negative feedback. And if you simplify that negative feedback, you end up having these guys and whatever you're going to get here in series. Okay. So I have a negative feedback there. So what's the negative feedback? How do you say? How do you simplify it to be this guy divided by 1 plus the product of this and this, right? Don't forget, right? Negative feedback. You're going to have G3, G2, G3, G2 plus G4 divided by 1 plus H2 times the product of that, right? Which is G3, G4 plus, G3, G2, G4. G4. So this is what we're going to end up having here after simplifying that, right? Okay, so let me just rewrite this. So again, I am going to draw the summing point. Draw summing points, okay? And then here you have G1. And I say that now here, what do you have? So I'm just going to draw a big block. So here, the combination of that negative feedback, you have what? G3 or G2 plus G4 divided by 1 plus H, this is H what? This is H2 times G2, G3 plus G4. Okay, like that. Okay, so that may not be visible enough, but yeah. And then also here you have this big block as well, which goes all the way up to here. This negative. So what do you have there? We have G2 H1 divided by G3 G2 plus G4. Okay, and then here also you have a unit feedback that goes all the way up to here. Sorry. Okay, it's negative. Okay, and then this is the output C of S. This is R of S. Okay, now just like I said, you see that this guy is now in parallel, right? I mean, sorry, in series. So you can find the product of these two, right? They're in series, and then after that, you're going to form another negative feedback, isn't it? So they're in series. So what you have now, you have two summing points. Okay, so G1 and the other block, they're in series, so you can multiply them. So we just end up having this big block. So that is G1 times G2, G3 plus G4. And then divide by 1 plus H2 G2, G3, G4 plus G4. Okay, and then just like before, as usual, we have this feedback. Okay, it goes all the way up to here, and then this is what G2 H1 divided by 1, so that G4 plus or G2 G3 G2 G3 plus G4. Okay, it's negative feedback, and then also have a unity negative feedback, right? Okay, this is the input, which is R of S. The output is C of S. Okay, so now at this point, what you can do is just now to simplify that, right? So this is negative feedback. Okay, this is negative feedback. So how do you simplify negative feedback? Okay, it's the gain of the forward path divided by 1 plus the product of this and that, isn't it? Okay, so let's simplify that. So I'm just going to simplify it by side here. Okay, so it's a G1 times G2 G3 plus G4, and then divide by 1 plus H2 multiplied by G2 G3 plus G4, and then this whole thing divided by 1 plus the product of these two, right? Which is if you have G2 H1 over G3 times G2 or G2 plus times G3 times G4. Okay, you multiply this by what? The same thing right on top. G1 times G2 times G3 plus G4 divided by H2 times what? G2 G3 plus G4. Okay, like that. So now if you notice here very well, we can cancel some terms, right? This and this can be cancelled out, isn't it? Okay, so that it just remain with G1 times G2 G3 plus G4 divided by, here is be 1 plus, it's just be G2 H1 multiplied by, on top we just have G1 over H2 G2 G3 plus G4, something like that. Okay, and then what I'm going to do, oh sorry, on top I've forgotten again something. Okay, let me just rewrite this. On top I've forgotten something. On top I've forgotten something, right? So here this guy has to be divided by denominator, its denominator, right? So what you have is this G1 G2 G3 plus G4 divided by 1 plus H2 times G2 G3 plus G4. Okay, so this is what you have now. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to multiply both on top and down by this guy denominator, right? 1 plus H2, all that in brackets. Similarly here, I'm going to multiply by the same 1 plus H2, this in brackets, right? I'm not going to write it. So if you do that, okay, these guys are going to cancel out. So what remain within the numerator just be G1, G2, G3 plus G4, and then in the denominator to be this one multiplied by this, right? So that would be just 1 plus H2 open bracket G3 G2 plus G4, and then plus here this side these guys and that guy can go and cancel out. So what remain with is just G1 G2 times H1. Okay, so this now the simplification of that block, right? The negative feedback. So what you're going to have now is this big block. So I'm going to write this big block, okay? So just a big block, I'm going to write like this. I just need a rectangle, I think. Okay. How many minutes am I remaining with? Of about 5 minutes. Okay, let's finish fast. Okay, so that what I'm going to write inside this to be that block, which is G1. Okay, so you have G1 multiplied by G2, G3 plus G4 over this is 1 plus H2 times G3, G2 plus G4 is G4 plus G1, G2, H1. Okay, and then okay, so this is a simplification of these guys, right? This guy. Now don't remember that we still have a unit feedback, isn't it? Just enter it here. So it's 12, it's a summing point. Okay. And then you still have this unit feedback here. All the way from here to here, right? This is the output C of S. This is the input R of S. This is a negative feedback. So again, you have a negative feedback there, which is unit. So to be this guy divided by the product of 1 times the same guy, isn't it? So you're going to have, okay, this G1 times G2, G3 plus G4 over that, which is 1 plus H2 times what? G2, G3 plus G4 plus, I've run out of time, and then plus G1, G2, H1. Okay, and then this you divide by what? 1 plus the same thing, right? G1, okay, G2, G3 plus G4 over 1 plus H2 multiplied by G2, G3 plus G4 plus G1, G2, H1. So if you notice, okay, if you notice here now, you can multiply both on top and down by this denominator, isn't it? So if you do that, what you're going to remain with is what? G1 on top, G2, G3 plus G4, and then in the denominator, you're going to have what? 1 plus H2 multiplied by G2, G3 plus G4, and then plus H2, okay? Oh, sorry, plus, sorry about that, it's C. Oh, plus G1, G2, okay, you can just say H1, G1, G2, and then plus the same thing again, repeat, isn't it? Which is the, um, which is the G1, okay, which is G1 multiplied by G2, G3 plus G4. Okay, so this is a final simplification, and thank you for watching my video. So I've just simplified here, multiply both on top and down by this. So this side they cancel out, while this side multiply by 1. So just remain with that, isn't it? Okay, so this is a final transfer function for this whole system. Okay, thank you so much. God bless you.